Welcome to Spiritual Clarity, a space for seekers, sensitives, and awakening souls. Each episode offers gentle reflections and lived wisdom to help you reconnect with inner truth, navigate change, and live with greater presence. I invite you to slow down, listen deeply, and walk the spiritual path with more ease, trust, and clarity. Welcome to the first episode of Spiritual Clarity. I'm Irma Francis. This podcast has been growing inside of me for a long time. Not as a polished product, but as a longing to have honest, grounded conversations about what it really means to walk a spiritual path in a complicated world. About the search for something deeper, more real, and more whole. In this first episode, I want to share why I'm creating this podcast, why spiritual clarity matters so much to me, and how we can begin to explore this path together. Like many of you, I've been on a spiritual journey most of my life, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. I've been inspired by ancient wisdom, mystics, teachers, dreams, moments of peace, and also by pain and confusion. By the deep desire to feel connected to something greater than myself, and also to truly know who I am. Along the way, I've realized I've often really been searching for clarity. Not answers for the sake of control, but clarity that brings truth, freedom, and inner peace. Clarity that allows us to live from the soul instead of a mask. To know when we're operating from fear and when we're aligned with love. To recognize our truth even when the world is noisy or when our inner world is in chaos. That's what spiritual clarity is about. I also want to share something personal about my own entry point into the spiritual path, because it shapes the way I see things and the voice I bring to this space. My spiritual awakening happened at a very young age, around 8 years old. I had a clear, direct experience of something real, a loving, vast, and unshakable presence that I now understand as soul or source. It was a knowing that something sacred exists and that I'm part of it. But having that kind of awakening so young didn't make life easier. In fact, it meant I had to grow up in a world that often didn't reflect the truth that I had already seen. I've spent much of my life trying to stay connected to soul while living in a world that is mostly driven by ego. I've had to learn how to stay anchored in love in a world built on fear. And that's been both my path and my challenge. I think of it as a kind of top-down spiritual journey, where the awareness comes first and then the human life has to catch up. For others, the journey may have been bottom-up, beginning with pain or longing and moving toward an awakening. But either way, there's still integration. Awakening is not the end. Whether you begin at the top or the bottom, we all have to walk the very human road of embodying truth, healing wounds, and growing in wholeness. Often when I tell people I had a spiritual awakening at 8 years old, they assume my life must have been easy, that knowing an ultimate truth early on made things smoother. But the truth is, being spiritually awake doesn't exempt you from the challenges of being human. The integration still has to happen. And what is that integration? To me, it's the ongoing work of bringing the human and the divine into unity. It's about developing wholeness, not escaping into the spiritual and not getting stuck in the material. It's learning to live in both worlds at once, with love, with presence, and with clarity. That's why I wanted to create this podcast, to share from that perspective and to offer what I've learned and what I'm still learning about how to navigate life as a spiritual being in a very human world. We're living in a time of massive spiritual seeking. There are more books, teachers, practices, and belief systems than ever before. But along with that comes confusion. Who are we really? What do all these concepts mean? And how do we know we're on a path that's actually healing and awakening us, and not just another form of performance of the ego or spiritual bypassing? Spiritual clarity is important because it helps us cut through illusion. It brings us back to what's essential. It keeps us anchored in our own inner knowing. It helps us live with integrity from the inside out. One of the first steps to clarity is asking, why have I been drawn to the spiritual path in the first place? What am I looking for? What do I truly believe? And here's one of the biggest questions at the heart of spiritual clarity. How do we stay connected to our higher self and to the source of all that is, while living in this secular, fast-moving, often disconnected world? How do we deal with jobs, traffic, bills, grief, uncertainty, conflict, while trying to stay rooted in something sacred? It's not about escaping the world or pretending to be above it. It's about living in the world, but not of the world. It's about becoming anchored in presence, living with our feet on the ground and our hearts open to the divine. That's the path, and it's not always easy, but it's deeply real. This podcast is here to be a companion for your journey. I'll be sharing reflections, tools, questions, and teachings that have helped me to reconnect to what matters most. We'll talk about navigating inner conflict with clarity, reclaiming our intuition, letting go of spiritual performance, healing the relationship between ego and soul, returning to the true self, and living in alignment with Source while being grounded in reality. And most importantly, this space is for honesty, not perfection, for real questions, not rehearsed answers. So if you're on a spiritual path or you're just trying to figure out who you are underneath the noise, welcome. You're not alone. May this podcast be a reminder that clarity is not a destination, it's a practice. It's something we return to again and again as we peel back the layers of illusion and come home to truth. Thank you for being here, and until next time, may you stay grounded, stay open, and stay connected to your inner light.